The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a golden glow over the quiet mountain temple. The scent of incense lingered in the air, mingling with the crisp morning breeze. Birds chirped softly in the distance, their melodies blending with the rustling leaves. An elderly monk, dressed in simple saffron robes, sat in quiet meditation on the temple's wooden veranda. His face, lined with the years of wisdom and experience, reflected a deep and unshakable peace. The rhythmic sound of a nearby water fountain added to the serene atmosphere. This was Master Tenzin, a man who had once lived a very different life. Decades ago, he had been known as Thomas Reynolds, a successful businessman, admired and respected, always chasing the next achievement, the next deal, the next moment of approval. He had built a vast empire, had a house that overlooked the city skyline, and friends who filled his grand parties with laughter. But beneath all the success, there was a lingering emptiness he could never quite escape. He felt as if he was running on an endless treadmill, exhausting himself in pursuit of an ever-elusive fulfillment. Then, one day, it all came crashing down. A financial scandal that he had no part in brought his company to ruin. The empire he had spent years building collapsed overnight. His so-called friends disappeared. His reputation was tarnished beyond repair. The weight of public judgment bore down on him, suffocating and unrelenting. For the first time in his life, he had nothing. No business, no status, no identity to cling to. In the silence that followed, he realized something profound. He had spent his entire life trying to control how others saw him, seeking happiness in their validation. And now, stripped of everything, he faced a terrifying question. Who was he when no one was watching? Lost and desperate for meaning, Thomas left everything behind. He wandered from city to city, seeking answers in places that only deepened his despair, until one fateful evening, he found himself in a small Buddhist monastery high in the mountains. It was there that he met an old monk who would change his life forever. The monk, seeing the torment in his eyes, spoke with gentle wisdom. You have spent your life looking outward, chasing things that were never truly yours. If you wish to find peace, you must learn to look within. Thomas resisted at first. The idea of letting go of external validation felt like surrender, like giving up on everything he had worked for. But something in the monk's calm presence stirred a curiosity in him. And so, reluctantly at first, he stayed. Days turned into months. Through meditation, study, and self-reflection, he began to see the truth he had ignored for so long. He realized that peace was not found in wealth, success, or admiration. It was in stillness, in acceptance, in detaching from the endless cycle of wanting more. In time, Thomas Reynolds became Master Tenzin, shedding the remnants of his past life like an old, worn-out garment. Now, as he sat watching the sunrise, he thought of all the people still trapped in the same cycle he once was, chasing approval, fearing judgment, sacrificing their peace to please others. He had spent years helping seekers find the path to true freedom, and today, he would share 10 powerful lessons that transformed his life. With a gentle smile, Master Tenzin opened his eyes, turned to the eager disciples sitting before him and said, "Let me tell you a story." Lesson 1. Happiness comes from within, Master. Tenzin looked at the young monks gathered before him, their eyes filled with curiosity and eagerness. He took a deep breath and began. Many years ago, when I was still Thomas Reynolds, I believed that happiness was something to be earned. I thought it came from success, from wealth, from the admiration of others. I spent my life chasing achievements, convinced that each new milestone would finally bring me peace. But no matter how much I gained, the happiness was always fleeting. The moment I reached one goal, another desire took its place. He paused, watching the disciples nod in understanding. One day, after losing everything, I sat alone in my empty house. There were no more congratulatory calls, no more dinner invitations. I felt invisible, as if I no longer existed. It was then that I realized my mistake. I had given others the Aoi power to define my worth. I had tied my happiness to their approval, and when they disappeared, so did my sense of self. Master Tenzin picked up a small cup and held it before the monks. "Imagine this cup represents your happiness," he said. "If you give it to others, you allow them to control it. When they praise you, they fill your cup. When they criticize you, they empty it. But if you keep your cup in your own hands, no one can take your happiness away." He set the cup down gently. Buddhism teaches us that happiness is not something we receive. It is something we cultivate within. It is found in gratitude, in presence, in acceptance of what is. When we stop depending on others for our happiness, we free ourselves from the endless cycle of seeking validation. One of the younger monks hesitantly raised his hand. "Master, how do we learn to find happiness within?" Master Tenzin smiled. "Begin with gratitude. Each morning, before you rise, take a moment to acknowledge 3 things you are grateful for. Throughout your day, practice mindfulness. Be present in each moment, whether you are eating, walking, or even breathing. And most importantly, be kind to yourself. Let go of the idea that you must be perfect to be worthy of happiness. You are enough, just as you are." The young monk bowed his head in reflection. Master Tenzin continued, "The world will always have opinions. People will come and go. But if you anchor your happiness within yourself, no storm can shake your peace." He looked at his disciples and concluded, "This is the first lesson. Happiness does not come from outside, it comes from within." Lesson 2. Do not fear solitude. It is where true strength lies, Master. Tenzin gazed at his disciples, sensing their deep contemplation. He knew that the next lesson was one that many struggled to accept. "There was a time when I feared being alone," he began. "When I lost everything, the silence was unbearable. No more phone calls, no more meetings, no more laughter of so-called friends. I thought solitude was a punishment, a void that needed to be filled. But the monastery taught me otherwise." He gestured toward the serene landscape surrounding them. "Look around you. Do you hear the trees complaining that they stand alone? Do you see the mountains fearing their own stillness? No. Nature embraces solitude, and in that solitude, it flourishes." The monks listened attentively as Master Tenzin continued. "Many people run from solitude because they are afraid of facing themselves. But solitude is not loneliness. It is an opportunity. It is in solitude that we hear our own thoughts clearly, that we understand ourselves without distraction. It is where true strength is cultivated." He picked up a smooth stone from the ground and held it up. "Imagine you are like this stone, thrown into a river of noise and expectations. You are shaped by the currents, by the opinions of others. But if you remove the stone from the water, place it on solid ground, it remains still. It does not need the river to define it." A young monk raised his hand. "Master, how do we learn to be comfortable with solitude?" Master Tenzin smiled. "Begin with small moments. Take 5 minutes each day to sit in silence, away from distractions. Observe your thoughts, but do not judge them. Over time, extend this practice. Go for walks alone. Eat a meal in silence. Spend time in nature without the need for constant stimulation." He took a deep breath before concluding. "When you no longer fear solitude, you will discover an unshakable inner power. You will learn that you are enough as you are, without the validation of others. And when you find peace in solitude, you will never feel truly alone again." The monks nodded in quiet understanding, the lesson settling into their hearts. Lesson 3. Let go of the need for approval, Master. Tenzin sat in quiet contemplation before addressing his disciples once more. One of the greatest burdens we carry is the constant need for approval. We seek validation from family, friends, colleagues, and even strangers. We believe that our worth is measured by how others perceive us. But this belief is an illusion. He looked at the group, his eyes filled with both wisdom and compassion. I, too, lived my life seeking approval. As a businessman, I worked tirelessly to impress my peers. I shaped my words and actions based on what I thought others wanted to see. But no matter how much I achieved, the approval was never enough. The moment I met one expectation, another replaced it. Master Tenzin picked up a single leaf that had fallen beside him. Consider this leaf. It does not ask the tree for permission to change colors in autumn. It does not worry about whether the other leaves approve of its transformation. It simply follows its nature. A young monk hesitated before asking, "Master, how do we free ourselves from this need for approval?" Master Tenzin smiled gently. The key lies in self-acceptance. Begin by recognizing that you are already enough, just as you are. When you make decisions, ask yourself, am I doing this because it aligns with my values, or because I want someone else's approval? Learn to trust yourself. Let go of the need for constant validation and you will find a freedom unlike any other. He paused, allowing his words to sink in. When you stop chasing approval, you reclaim your own power. You live authentically, without fear. And in doing so, you inspire others to do the same. The monk sat in thoughtful silence, absorbing the lesson that could change the way they saw themselves and the world around them. Lesson 4. Do not let rejection define you, master. Tenzin observed his disciples, sensing the weight of their past disappointments. Rejection is something we all experience. He said, "It stings. It makes us question our worth. But what if I told you that rejection is not a reflection of your value, but rather a redirection towards something better?" He paused, letting his words settle before continuing. When I lost everything, my business, my reputation, I felt as if the world had cast me aside. I thought my life was over, but in that emptiness, I found a path I never would have considered. The loss I once mourned became the very thing that led me to true peace. Master Tenzin picked up a stone and tossed it into the nearby pond. Ripples spread across the surface. Rejection is like this stone. It may disturb the water at first, but soon, the ripples fade, and the pond becomes still once more. Life moves forward, whether we dwell on the rejection or not. A young monk asked, "Master, how do we learn to accept rejection without pain?" Master Tenzin smiled. First, do not take it personally. Often, rejection has more to do with the one rejecting than with you. Second, see it as an opportunity. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can this redirect me to something greater? Lastly, trust that rejection is part of the journey, not the end of it. He looked at his disciples, his voice calm yet firm. Do not let rejection break you. Let it guide you. Every closed door leads you closer to the one that is meant for you. Embrace it with grace, and you will find that rejection is not an obstacle. It is a lesson in disguise. The monks bowed, their heads in understanding, their hearts lighter with the wisdom of the lesson. Lesson 5. Stop worrying about what others think. Master Tenzin gazed at his disciples, sensing their silent struggles with self-doubt. One of the greatest sources of suffering is the fear of judgment. He said, "We let the opinions of others shape our actions, dictate our choices, and even determine our sense of self-worth. But the truth is, what others think of you is none of your concern." He let his words settle before continuing. When I was younger, I built my entire life around earning approval. Every decision I made was carefully crafted to avoid criticism. But no matter how much I tried, there were always those who disapproved, who doubted, who judged. It was an exhausting, endless pursuit, one that led only to frustration and emptiness. Master Tenzin pointed to the sky. Look at the birds. They do not concern themselves with who watches them or who admires their flight. They simply fly. Should we not live the same way? A disciple hesitated before asking, "Master, how do we free ourselves from this fear?" Master Tenzin smiled. "First, realize that people's opinions are fleeting and ever-changing. What they admire today, they may criticize tomorrow. Second, understand that their judgments are a reflection of their own beliefs, not of your truth. Lastly, cultivate self-acceptance. When you truly know yourself, the opinions of others lose their power over you." He looked into the eyes of his disciples. Live authentically. Speak your truth. Walk your path without fear. The world will always have something to say, but you do not have to listen. True freedom comes when you stop seeking validation and start embracing who you are. The monks sat in quiet reflection, the weight of societal expectations slowly lifting from their shoulders. Lesson 6. Do not sacrifice your peace to please others. Master Tenzin watched as his disciples absorbed the previous lessons, yet he could see the lingering traces of worry on their faces. Many of us live our lives bending over backwards to make others happy. He began. We fear disappointing them. We say yes when we mean no, and we place their needs above our own. But at what cost? He paused, letting the question settle before continuing. When I was younger, I believed that to be loved, I had to be agreeable. I avoided conflict, always striving to be what others wanted me to be. But with every compromise, I lost a piece of myself. The more I sacrificed my peace for others, the more exhausted and resentful I became. Master Tenzin gestured toward a flowing stream nearby. A river flows freely, shaping the land yet never losing itself. But imagine if the river tried to change its course to satisfy every rock and tree in its path. It would never reach its destination. A young monk hesitantly asked, "Master, how do we find balance between helping others and maintaining our own peace?" Master Tenzin smiled. Compassion is a beautiful thing, but true compassion must include yourself. Set boundaries without guilt. Understand that saying no to others when necessary is saying yes to your well-being. When you take care of your own peace, you give from a place of strength, not sacrifice. He looked at his disciples with gentle wisdom. You are not responsible for everyone's happiness. It is not selfish to protect your inner peace. It is necessary. Only when you are at peace with yourself can you truly give to others without losing yourself in the process. The monks sat in deep contemplation, realizing that preserving their own peace was not an act of selfishness, but an act of wisdom. Lesson 7. Focus on what you can control. Master Tenzin observed his disciples, sensing their struggles with the unpredictable nature of life. He gently folded his hands and spoke. Much of our suffering comes from trying to control things beyond our reach. We want people to behave a certain way. We want situations to unfold according to our desires. And when they do not, we feel frustrated, anxious, or even hopeless. He picked up a handful of sand and let it slip through his fingers. Imagine trying to grasp this sand too tightly. You will lose it. But if you hold it gently, it remains in your palm. Life is much the same. The more we try to control what is beyond us, the more we suffer. A cool breeze passed through the monastery, carrying with it the scent of blooming jasmine. The disciples listened intently as Master Tenzin continued. When I was younger, I believed I could shape everything to my will, my business, my relationships, my future. I planned every detail meticulously, believing that effort alone could dictate outcomes. But no matter how much I prepared, life had its own course. Unexpected losses, betrayals, and circumstances beyond my control humbled me. He looked at his disciples with kindness. The key to peace is realizing that the only thing you truly have control over is yourself. Your actions, your thoughts, your responses. Everything else is beyond your grasp. One of the younger monks hesitated before asking, Master, how do we practice this in daily life? Master Tenzin smiled. Begin by recognizing what is within your control. Your effort, your attitude, your kindness, these are yours to shape. But the reactions of others, the circumstances of the world, these are not for you to dictate. When you focus on what you can control, you free yourself from unnecessary worry and open the door to peace. He then added, a storm may rage outside, but if your mind is calm, you will remain steady. This is how you cultivate inner strength, by letting go of what you cannot change and directing your energy inward. He concluded with a gentle nod. Let go of the illusion of control. Instead, master yourself. That is where true strength lies. The monks sat in deep contemplation, realizing that peace was not found in controlling the world, but in mastering their own minds. The sound of wind chimes echoed softly, reinforcing the lesson in their hearts. Lesson 8. Realize that people are focused on their own lives. Master Tenzin looked around at his disciples and saw the weight of unnecessary worry on their faces. He smiled knowingly and began. We often believe that others are constantly watching and judging us. But the truth is, most people are too preoccupied with their own lives to focus on us. He picked up a smooth stone and held it in his palm. When I was younger, I lived in constant fear of what others thought. I would carefully choose my words, my actions, even my dreams based on how I believed people would perceive me. It was exhausting. And yet, in the end, I realized something profound. No one was thinking about me as much as I imagined. The disciples listened closely as he continued. Every person you meet carries their own worries, dreams, and struggles. They, too, are consumed by thoughts of how others see them. In reality, we are all like travelers on separate journeys, occasionally crossing paths, but always returning to our own roads. A young monk hesitantly raised his hand. Master, what if someone does judge us? How do we stop caring? Master Tenzin smiled gently. Understand that their judgment is more about them than it is about you. People see the world through the lens of their own experiences, fears, and biases. If they criticize you, it is a reflection of their own struggles, not your worth. He continued, rather than worrying about what others think, shift your focus inward. Ask yourself, am I living in alignment with my values? Am I being kind, truthful, and compassionate? If the answer is yes, then no opinion can shake your peace. Master Tenzin then gestured to the vast sky above them. The clouds pass, the winds shift, but the sky remains. Be like the sky, unchanged by passing opinions. The monks sat in silent reflection, feeling a newfound lightness in their hearts. They understood that true freedom comes not from controlling others' perceptions, but from letting go of the fear of judgment. The burden of worrying about others had lifted, replaced by a quiet confidence in simply being themselves. Lesson 9. Stop comparing yourself to others. Master Tenzin observed his disciples as they quietly absorbed the previous lessons. He could sense an unspoken struggle among them, the tendency to measure themselves against others. With a warm smile, he began. Comparison is one of the greatest thieves of joy. We look at others and wonder why they have more, achieve more, or seem happier. But in doing so, we lose sight of our own unique path. He picked up 2 different flowers from the garden. Beside him, one a radiant lotus, the other a delicate jasmine. Holding them up, he asked, "Tell me, which of these flowers is more beautiful?" The disciples hesitated. Each flower had its own charm, its own essence. Master Tenzin continued, "You see, they are different, yet both serve their purpose. The lotus blooms in muddy waters, unbothered by its surroundings, while the jasmine spreads its fragrance in the night, unseen but deeply felt. Neither wishes to be the other, and yet both bring beauty to the world." He let his words settle before adding, "We too are like these flowers. Each of us has our own journey, our own strengths, and our own timing. When you compare yourself to others, you take your focus away from your own growth. You forget that your purpose is not to outshine someone else, but to be the best version of yourself. A young disciple asked, "Master, how do we stop comparing when the world constantly encourages competition?" Master Tenzin nodded. Begin by practicing gratitude. Each day, acknowledge something unique about yourself. Your kindness, your efforts, your progress. Shift your attention inward and celebrate small victories rather than measuring them against someone else's. When you embrace your individuality, the need to compare fades. He looked at the disciples, his voice gentle, yet firm. Remember, the moon does not envy the sun, and the river does not compete with the ocean. They simply exist, fulfilling their own purpose. So should you. The monks sat in deep reflection, realizing that by letting go of comparison, they could finally embrace their own journey with peace and fulfillment. Lesson 10. Prioritize inner growth over external validation. Master. Tenzin sat in quiet reflection before addressing his disciples once more. In a world that constantly seeks validation through status, wealth, and recognition, it is easy to lose sight of what truly matters. Our inner growth. Many chase success to prove their worth, believing that external achievements define them. But the truth is, real fulfillment comes from within. He gestured toward the tranquil pond in front of him. A still pond reflects the sky clearly. But if the water is disturbed, the reflection is broken. Similarly, when we depend on the opinions of others to define our self-worth, our inner peace becomes unstable, constantly shifting based on praise or criticism. The disciples listened intently as Master Tenzin continued. There was a time when I measured my value by how others perceived me. I worked tirelessly to earn admiration, to hear words of approval. But even at the height of success, I felt empty. No amount of praise ever seemed enough. It was only when I turned inward, when I focused on self-awareness, mindfulness, and compassion, that I found true peace. A young monk hesitantly raised his hand. Master, how do we shift our focus inward when society constantly pressures us to seek validation? Master Tenzin smiled. It begins with awareness. Recognize when you are seeking approval and ask yourself, does this validation truly add to my happiness, or is it just a temporary satisfaction? Replace external validation with self-reflection. Instead of measuring success by how others see you, measure it by your growth. Are you more patient, more compassionate, more at peace than you were yesterday? He continued, meditate on your values. Live with integrity, not to impress others, but to align with your true self. When you prioritize inner growth, you become unshaken by fleeting opinions. You realize that happiness is not found in external praise, but in the quiet confidence of knowing who you are. He looked at his disciples with warmth. Do not chase recognition, chase wisdom. Do not seek approval. Seek understanding. True fulfillment does not come from the outside. It is cultivated from within. The monks sat in profound silence, absorbing the final lesson. They understood that their worth was never meant to be determined by the world, but by the depth of their own inner peace. The path to true peace, Master. Tenzin gazed at his disciples, seeing the wisdom now reflected in their eyes. He had shared with them the 10 lessons that had transformed his own life, guiding him from a place of uncertainty to one of unshakable peace. Now, it was time to leave them with a final thought. Each of you has come here seeking something, he said softly. Perhaps clarity, perhaps freedom from suffering, but the answers you seek have always been within you. The lessons I have shared are not rules to follow, but reflections to ponder. They are reminders that true peace is not something to be found. It is something to be cultivated within. The gentle rustling of the wind filled the air as he continued. Life will continue to test you. There will be moments of doubt, moments where you feel lost. But when those moments come, remember this. You are not defined by what others think of you, by your successes or failures. You are defined by your ability to remain present, to act with kindness, and to find contentment in simplicity. A disciple bowed deeply, his voice filled with gratitude. Master, how do we ensure we do not forget these lessons? Master Tenzin smiled. By living them. By reminding yourself each day that happiness comes from within. That solitude is a gift. That you are enough as you are. By letting go of comparison, seeking growth over approval, and embracing the journey rather than rushing toward a destination. He stood, looking toward the horizon where the sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the mountains. The path to peace is not in reaching a final goal, but in walking each step with awareness. Walk it with patience, walk it with purpose, and most of all, walk it with a heart that is open. The monks sat in silence, absorbing his words. They knew that their journey did not end here. It was only the beginning. And with that understanding, they bowed to their teacher, carrying his wisdom in their hearts as they stepped forward on their own paths toward true peace and self-discovery.